Joining us now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Governor DeSantis, it's fantastic to see you. What do you make of this? I know you've talked about this for years, that Republicans should not, be wedded to this, just pull out a victory and cobble together the votes they need electorally in just 5 or 6 states, but make it a national campaign for renewal. Trump in Long Island, was that an important moment?
Yeah, look, if you look at last election, they say Biden won by however many millions of votes. That was all New York and California because Republicans haven't really played there. We had a good run in the governor's race in New York. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I think what he's doing is laying the groundwork to have a resurgence in New York, and it may not be enough to actually win it. Part of the reason, Laura, is because a lot of the Republicans in New York have moved to my state of Florida. So we have 1 million more Republicans now than Democrats, and that's just the reality. But yes, I think the message resonates. And so you got to win the Electoral College. No one is saying to ignore that. And I know they've put a lot of time into that. But some of these places, we can't just write off indefinitely. New York and California with no pathway to come back. Look what's happened in Florida. We used to be a 1-point state, and now we have 1 million more Republicans, and we're reliably red. So these things can change. And I'll tell you, there was an awful lot of people in that arena last night in Long Island.
Well, apparently, the Harris campaign, Governor, thinks that they can actually win Florida. An ABC reporter tweeting that Doug Emhoff told a room of donors in Manhattan Wednesday that the Harris campaign views Florida as a potential battleground. Governor, I know you never want to take anything for granted, but what about what the would-be first gentleman is saying about Florida?
Yeah, that's wishful thinking. At the end of the day, you have a candidate in Kamala Harris. She's a vapid San Francisco leftist. We've got people that have fled San Francisco to come to Florida to get away from Harris's type of governance. I have people in Florida who fled Minnesota to get away from Tim Walz's governance. They saw Minneapolis burn when he was governor, and he sat there and let it happen. So that's not in the cards, especially in Florida, not just because of the fact that we have so many more Republicans now, but we have a lot of Republicans who know what that type of leftist governance is. And you pointed out in the lead into this how she does not like to answer questions. She doesn't go out there. And there's a reason for that, because ultimately her beliefs are way out of step with the American people. She wants to tell people what they want to hear in a moment. She can't even answer questions about what she would do about the border, what she would do to bring grocery prices down. They ask her, what would you do to do inflation? She says, well, I grew up in a middle-class family. Well, that's nice, but that is not a plan for this country's future.
Now, Governor, I want to turn to another topic because we were relieved to hear that you are doing your own independent investigation in Florida concerning the second assassination attempt on President Trump. My question to you tonight is, are the feds being cooperative with your investigation? Are you concerned that you're not getting the information you need?
The answer is no, they're not being cooperative. Yes, I am concerned. I mean, for example, we were rebuffed, our investigators were rebuffed just going to the fence line outside of Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach. And so I think they've taken the position, they don't want the state of Florida to be involved in this. But here's the thing. There were multiple violations of Florida law across multiple jurisdictions. We think at least 3 judicial circuits. This guy, Ryan Routh, committed potential violations of Florida law. So we have a duty to investigate this. We have a duty to bring the appropriate charges. And we also have a duty to inform the public about how this happened. So I don't anticipate they're being cooperative. I think that they've just taken that position. And I think that that's unfortunate because even though I've been very clear, state of Florida is going to do an investigation, I've not disputed their right to also investigate. It's the federal government. He was in their protective custody as a presidential candidate. But let us do this. So hopefully that tune will change. But I can tell you right now, Laura, we have not gotten a lot of receptive response.
Very disturbing. By the way, we have Ruth's mugshot, where he looks to be slightly smirking. He's a very strange individual, to say the least, but we've heard other FBI agents, former agents, Governor, say they think it's quite odd that in the first assassination attempt and the second assassination attempt, there's almost an immediate response from the feds saying that, oh, looks like he's acted alone, or we really don't know what the motives are here. Does that strike you as slightly strange, to say the least?
Yeah, I don't think the public has confidence when that is being done. So as soon as we got word of this on Sunday, I told our guys in state law enforcement, save all his social media, because Facebook will delete it. The tech companies want to delete it.
Right.
Get his digital trail, store that, because we need to know, how did he end up in Florida to begin with? What is this pathway this guy has taken to end up in those bushes trying to assassinate the former president of the United States and current Republican nominee? How did that happen? And we have not gotten answers about Butler. We haven't gotten answers about things like the Las Vegas shooting from many years ago. So part of the investigation that our folks are doing is they are going to provide evidence they find of motive, evidence of his associations, and evidence of his beliefs.
Good.
I think that's very important that the public get the real story on that.
Yeah, well, and the FBI has shredded its own credibility. And Governor, thank goodness you're doing an investigation. I was so happy to hear that. And it's wonderful to see you tonight. Thank you so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.